Hello, this is Peter Woolfolk, producer and host of the Public Relations Review podcast. When I conceived this program, my idea was to provide public relations practitioners with a wide variety of solid, useful information and guidance from public relations professionals across America. And we are doing that. I will continue to cover important topics such as crisis communications and artificial intelligence and other such important topics. But I will also address other issues such as diversity in public relations, marketing to women, public relations trends, various data concerns, and much more. From time to time, I will also invite vendors of public relations products on to help you better understand how these products can improve your efficiency and your effectiveness. You will learn a lot from our podcast, so thank you for listening, and please inform your colleagues about the Public Relations Review podcast and continue listening. Thank you so very much.
Welcome. This is the Public Relations Review podcast, a program to discuss the many facets of public relations with seasoned professionals, educators, authors, and others. Now, here is your host, Peter Woolfolk.
Welcome to the Public Relations Review to our listeners all across the United States and around the world. Georgi Bohrod is principal of GBG Associates and has produced a wealth of tactical marketing, advertising, and public relations plans. Her involvement in changing the public relations perception of the timeshare industry is widely acknowledged. She has influenced the success of trade associations, legal services, hospitality, nonprofits, software, and architectural services. She is the founder and member of the board of directors of Women in the Industry, and she is a member of the Public Relations Society of America. Georgi is also a registered resort professional. She has received awards for collateral materials, interactive media, and public relations campaign. Now, she was also on the founding team of the world's finest resorts, and they eventually became the RCI's Registry Collection. Now, joining me for the Public Relations Review from the delightful city of San Diego, California, is my guest today, Georgi Bohrod. Welcome, Georgi.
Thank you, Peter. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Now, tell us, how did you get started in the resort timeshare industry, and exactly what do you do for your clients in that industry?
Well, this is sort of a funny story. Many years ago, I went to Northwestern University and studied journalism and communications, particularly on the broadcast side. In those days, it was actually called radio, television, and film. But as we know, the communications platforms are much larger than that today. So I went to school basically for what I do now. I had a couple of jobs with ad agencies. I did a lot of freelance writing. I wrote some newspaper articles. And over time, I moved to San Diego and was working in a firm where there was an advertising department, an art department, and a PR department. And each one of those departments was led by one principal. Every Friday, they'd go into their conference room, and there would be a lot of yelling and screaming, and they would come out, and they would hand us all our paycheck. We happened to get a paycheck then once a week, and then we would go off for our weekend and come back on Monday morning. Well, one day and the primary accounts that they had were software accounts, so I was working on a lot of software accounts at that time. So one Friday afternoon, they came out of their yell fest, and it was particularly more vociferous than others. They said, "We can't do this anymore. We're going to shut this place down, and instead of your 1 week check, we'll give you 2 weeks checks, but don't bother to come back on Monday because we're not going to be here anymore."
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
Oh, my goodness is right. At the time, I had a husband, my then husband, not my present husband, but my then husband was in law school. I had a young daughter in the first grade, And basically, I was the main support of the family. And I said, oh, my gosh, what am I going to do? So I happened to have a good friend in an office just around the corner, and she said, there's a new timeshare project going up in Carlsbad, and the name of the company is Winter Circle Resorts, and they're looking for, and I'm putting air quotes here, a marketing gal. Well, I needed the money, but when I thought about it, I went home, I threw myself down on the bed and sobbed. I said, how am I going to tell my parents, who spent all this money to send me to Northwestern, that I was going to go work at a timeshare? I was humiliated. But I didn't have much choice. So I went for my interview. They offered me the position. And I'd like to say the rest is history, but it's my history. Nobody else would really care about it. But that company became the fastest selling timeshare project on the west of the Mississippi. It was a hugely profitable and exciting development. And eventually my boss and mentor, I will say his name, James Watkins, he's still active today in his 80s. He really put together an exceptional program and built 8 resorts up and down the coast of California. And I was with the company during that high growth time. Well, eventually that company was sold to another company who became my client. And I went to work for a company which offered services to the timeshare industry, and I went in-house working as their director of marketing communications, primarily B2B. So that's how I got into this strange and wonderful world of timesharing and all the communications platforms that timesharing needs. Now, the reason it has such a depth of communications opportunities is because it's such a complicated industry in and of itself. And I could spend this time talking about the timeshare industry, but I want to focus on the communications portions of it. So within that industry, I do a lot of what we call traditional PR. Press releases, media relations, and today, of course, a lot of social media, blogging, web content. So that niche is primarily looking at the B2B component of the timeshare industry. Then I also do a lot of work in the B2C portion of the industry, and that surrounds itself with more things like producing videos, a lot of online work, member communications, prospect communications, direct mail campaigns. So because of the wide spectrum of timesharing, I've had the opportunity to work in so many communications platforms. And at GBG, one of our specialties is matching the platform to the audience. And that's what we consider our unique selling proposition, is that we can match different kinds of ways of communicating with the appropriate audience.
Now, that's
my short story of how I got into this business.
Well, and I like that, but you also piqued my curiosity now, matching the platforms to the audience. Go into a bit more detail so that we'll have a broader understanding of exactly what that is and how you go about it.
Okay. So I'll start from I'll start on the B2C side with a maturing population in the timeshare industry. And I want to make it clear, I deal with other markets as well, but this one has a lot of fascination because eventually we'll get into talking about reputation management, which is very important in this industry as well. So right now, early on in this business, we were only using direct mail and phone calls to talk to prospective buyers of timeshares and existing members. One of our greatest tasks was trying to get people's emails in that time frame. Nobody had email. Well, today we know that an email is probably the most traditional way of communicating with people, other than snail mail, direct mail pieces, and so forth. And we've had to move on to different things like Twitter, Facebook, even Snapchat. Mm-hmm. So when we talk to our older clients, our more mature clients, we spend a lot of time on Facebook, which has an older demographic. We actually still use direct mail. We still use traditional press releases, and we still use a lot of print advertising and earned print media. But that is primarily to talk to higher-level C-suite professionals and owners, because these folks are a little bit older, and they like to be addressed and they're more comfortable getting emails, getting direct mail, mm-hmm. and seeing things in print. Well, that's not always the case for other folks that are, let's say, the millennials. That it's kind of an ephemeral term. Everybody's talking about millennials who aren't so young these days. But millennials like to deal more on different kinds of communication via social media. Mm-hmm. So that's an example of how we talk to people. And then there's still people who really enjoy getting a phone call. So I have one client who has the ability to broadcast a live what he calls a teletown conference to more than 50,000 people. Mm. And people can actually interact with their voices, as we're doing now. They can ask questions. They can receive direct responses. So there are so many ways to talk to folks. We just have to know which is the one they want to hear from us the most, on which level they want to hear from us on.
Well, I'm certainly glad to hear you say that, how you go about segmenting people, because you're absolutely right. A lot of folks are engaged, if you will, in digital, and that have a tendency to forget that senior citizens, if you will, or older citizens, actually have more money than a lot of millennials do. So they have a tendency to overlook that. But the other side of that is also data, because this is a big area that we concentrate in as well. So you mentioned newspapers and other sort of outreach efforts. Do you track or collect the data from and determine what your responses are or how effective that has been?
It's a constant struggle. Of course, we do track it. I really feel very strongly that our clients deserve to see how they are faring in the media marketplace. We start with what we call, instead of an ROI, mm-hmm. we call it an ROO, return on objectives. Because as you know, in public relations, it's very hard to have a direct relationship with the bottom line. But we can tell who we're engaging, for how long we were engaging them, if they took further action after that engagement, mm-hmm. and so forth. So I use a platform. I've used a number of off-the-shelf platforms, if you will, and right now I work with Meltwater, not only to find out more about the media folks that I'm dealing with, but also to measure the results of our campaigns. Mm-hmm. And I look at it daily, but I prepare a report for my clients on a monthly basis, which includes what we call press pickup, social media impressions, click-throughs, results. And from that, we can discern if we're in the right marketplace, if we're talking to the right people, and it allows us to do a lot of A and B testing as well. Okay. So at one time, we'll work with a newsletter and see if there are a lot of click-through to the links in the newsletter. Another time we'll try that message and we'll do it through a press release, let's say, so that we can compare the media that we've used with what our results have been.
Okay. Now, considering particularly for timeshares, do you have these open houses, hors d'oeuvres, all of that sort of good stuff? Because for a timeshare, for instance, that people obviously want to, for lack of a better term, kick the tires, come in and see and envision themselves overlooking, if they're on the Pacific Ocean, seeing the ocean from their balcony or whatever else goes along with that.
Well, there are a lot of ways to market timeshares, and that is changing on a daily basis. We used to say, folks don't wake up in the morning saying, I think I'll go out and buy a timeshare today. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately, for this particular industry. My particular role, now that I have an independent agency and have had one for over 20 years, is not so much in the direct marketing of the timeshare to the prospects, but more in providing all the support and what I call warming up for the sale, so that when the direct marketers, who are highly skilled, either digital marketers or actually contact center marketers, when they set up their outreach to the prospect, my job is to make sure that that prospect isn't walking into that resort or that developer's entity totally without knowledge of what's going on. So I don't have to plan the hors d'oeuvres anymore, even though at one time when I was a marketing gal at Winter Circle, I had to plan that part. But my job really is more than providing the pretty pictures and words, but giving a lot of background and education about a particular project or a particular service. I want to talk a little bit about the B2B work too, a particular service, so that when my clients approach their clients, their prospective clients, those prospective clients already have a good feeling about the client who is approaching them. Let me give you an example. I work with a lot of resorts that are in Mexico. So they have a big target market here in the U.S. for people to come down to Mexico. And lately there have been some challenges about going down to Mexico. So I spent a lot of time developing a campaign for one of my clients that was more educational about the safety of the area, how to make sure that you're safe in Mexico, how to take advantage of the warm, wonderful weather and hospitality of Mexico. And we spent a lot of time developing that so that when our clients were approached to visit a Mexican timeshare, they were not full of negativity about what the situation could or would be in Mexico. So that's how one of the ways a company used our services.
Well, I'm glad to hear you mention that, because obviously that was going to be a question I'd ask you. But sort of drilling down, when you talked about helping people feel more comfortable about going to Mexico, what sort of things did you let them know that could perhaps alleviate some fears they may have had?
One of the things that we do the most, and I do this for my B2B clients as well, there is nothing better than a human being testimonial. So what we did in one case was to use live Facebook streaming with people having wonderful times on vacation and talking about how great it was and how comfortable they were there, and about their particular favorite server in a restaurant or an experience that they had. So that probably built that trust more than any other kind of campaign could do with owner-member testimonials. But the same thing with my B2B clients. Now, I have a lot of clients that their particular product is something that resorts or resort developers can use. So they want to be able to talk to this marketplace too. And for instance, I have one client, Customer Count by name, which is a survey solution to build stronger customer engagement and also to let resorts know, or other businesses know, but primarily resorts, how they're faring and ways that they can improve on their performances and things that are working well for them. So I work with this survey company a lot, and we use every sort of media available to us because we find that the folks in the resorts come from such the executives in the resorts, the decision makers, come from such a wide range of demographics themselves. So we have to approach that with a many-pronged approach to be able to share the information about the value of this particular product.
Now, do you also try to encourage or help them encourage people from not only the U.S. but from other countries, because some of them do come, I don't know, fly down from Canada or maybe even some European nations to come to Mexico as a place to relax for a while?
Well, since we're talking about Mexico, and I do have, there are clients that I have other resorts that are in the mountain areas and in South Florida. But as far as Mexico goes, I am a member of the Canadian Vacation Ownership Association, and there are about, and I don't have the statistic exactly, Peter, but it's in the area of around 30% of the owners and members of timeshares in Mexico are Canadian. It may be a little bit less than that, but there's a very heavy representation. So we work a lot in that Canadian market, talking about Mexico. The other clients that I have, one client I have that's particularly exciting to me is a vacation club. Now, a vacation club is different than a timeshare, but the bottom line, it does offer affordable vacations to its membership, and that is similar across the line. But a vacation club is less expensive. It's not as much of a time commitment. It has a little bit younger demographic because they're younger folks don't really want to commit too much for a lifetime of vacations, for goodness sake. And this particular vacation club has its own properties, and they have a lot of them in southern Florida, for instance, and that it's so wonderful and warm down there. But around Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Boca Raton, that area, and they have resorts in that area. So it has a different feeling to it, actually, than the ones that we're talking about traveling out of the country. These are folks that usually travel domestically, so it has a different flavor for that.
Well, when you think back of all the things that you've done exciting, what would you consider perhaps your most challenging assignment to get completed to fulfill your clients' objectives?
Well, most recently, and since we're focusing on the timeshare industry, you yourself might have witnessed this. There is a huge challenge with reselling a timeshare. Unfortunately, in a lot of sales presentations, folks were promised many, many years ago that when they were done using their timeshare, they could resell it. Well, it's not quite that easy. You're facing, if you're an individual who's owned a timeshare for 15 years and your lifestyle has changed, or you can't travel as much, or you've gone through a divorce, you're faced with dealing with selling your timeshare. Well, most of us know that you're not going to get full price for it. You wouldn't get full price for a car. You wouldn't get full price on Craigslist for a used treadmill. So you're not going to get full price for your timeshare. But the huge, there is a spate of timeshare resale companies which are unfortunately really digging into the timeshare market in a negative way because their messaging is negative timeshare. You might hear one of these in your car. You might see a headline. You want to get rid of your timeshare? Well, if you're trying to sell somebody a timeshare, how would you like to have that barrage of information saying, timeshares are a ripoff, you don't want to be part of a timeshare, why don't you get rid of yours? So counteracting that kind of messaging has been probably the biggest challenge, not only our company, but even the developers themselves have had to deal with in the past couple years. I even had a client who is a good guy in the timeshare resale world. He has a program which is advertising timeshares. He works with clients directly. He gets them good prices. But it's very hard to get that information out there when it is clouded by these other companies, which are basically taking these old timeshare clients and members and taking their money and promising them the moon, and they're not getting it. So that has been the biggest challenge so far. Luckily, with my client that I've been working with for over a year, he is developed a very fine relationship with people in the industry, as well as individual timeshare owners, and is meeting with great success on a one-to-one basis, helping people whose lives have changed and no longer need or want their timeshare, or their children don't want it. He's helping them at least get some of their investment back.
Well, that's very, very great to hear. Just briefly, I'm the former chairman of the Better Business Bureau here in Nashville, and that was one of the major complaints that they would get from a particular timeshare company that really didn't offer much of anything. Once they signed the contract to sell their timeshare, the company did very, very little for them. So it got to be quite a mess. So I can understand the predicament you were in.
Well, it's a perfect job. I mean, it's job security for a PR person to take a challenging situation and do our best in conjunction with our client to, modify that situation so that it isn't a morass of negativity, but has some fair and equal kind of footing so that people understand what they're getting, how they're getting it, and what the next steps would be.
Well, I can certainly, on the flip side of that, my family does have a timeshare down in Myrtle Beach, and actually we really, really enjoy going down there. The amenities of the place, the beach. I actually enjoy it very, very much. The palm trees. I guess it's like being in Southern California for you. The ocean views, all those kinds of great things, great seafood. So there certainly are some very, very positive benefits to owning a timeshare.
Yes, there are. And see, you're a perfect example for me, Peter, because it's folks like you who do own a timeshare, do enjoy using it, see the benefits of it. So we try to get more and more real people to talk about what they get out of their timeshare and how positive that is.
Georgie, you have provided us with some great information about the timeshare industry and how you helped help your folks grow. Are there any other issues or topics you'd like to sort of impart now?
You know, what I'd like to impart, because I'm not totally sure about the folks that are listening to this. I'm sure many of them are like me, that are PR professionals. But I just want to really say that communicating is not just one form. And I think the beauty of being what we call a PR person is that we get to communicate. And I like to look at myself, and I know a lot of my colleagues do too, as communicators, and thinking of the best ways that we can help a client tell their story in a way that it will get to the right sources so that people can hear the right things to help you grow as a business.
Well, Georgi Bohrod, you have been very, very informational, and I really appreciate your taking the time to join us today. I'd also like to say...
And I thank you, Peter. This has been terrific.
Well, perhaps we'll have to do this again sometime in the future.
It'd be my pleasure.
Okay. And to all of our listeners around America and across the world, Thank you for listening to the Public Relations Review, and please share this with your colleagues. And don't forget to join us for the next edition of the Public Relations Review.
This podcast is produced by Communication Strategies, an award-winning public relations and public affairs firm headquartered in Nashville, Tennessee. Thank you for joining us.